Welcome back to this very special edition of the Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host and program moderator, Wu Ruiguo. Now, in this segment, we will continue our discussions on U.S.-Taiwan and cross-strait relations. First, I'll begin with Professor Zagoria. Professor, I know you've been a long-term observer of the relations across Taiwan Straits and also, overall, general U.S. foreign policy. Would you care to characterize for us what are the general trends that you have seen in U.S. foreign policy? What are some of the national security priorities under the Obama administration?
Well, first of all, let me say that I completely agree with Ambassador Lord. Mm-hmm. I am a Democrat, but I'm a centrist Democrat. I'm a passionate centrist.
That seems to be a fashionable thing now.
Ambassador Lord says. And I'm a passionate pragmatist.
Yes.
And my enemy are ideologues, whether of the left or the right.
Yes.
And what I see in the Obama administration is a good, pragmatic, centrist, experienced group of people. Mm-hmm. As to their priorities, I think, first of all, what is welcome to me is what I would call a great power realism. Mm-hmm. President Obama met at the G20 with both President Medvedev of Russia, mm-hmm. with Hu Jintao of China, and two very comprehensive communiques came out of those meetings, mm-hmm. both very positive. I think we're getting the Russians back on the track of a relationship that could be promising, mm-hmm. and the relationship with China will continue to be a positive relationship. I think he's also going to reach out to other prospective great powers like India, for example. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I would say number one is an emphasis on great powers. Number two, he's obviously inherited a lot of trouble spots.
Yes, very severe problems.
Very severe problems. Afghanistan, Pakistan, mm-hmm. Iran, North Korea. And so he's going to have to address these problems, and he's moved very quickly. He's appointed special ambassadors, Ambassador Holbrooke, and what we now call AFPAC, Afghanistan mm-hmm. and Pakistan, Steve yes. Bosworth on North Korea.
Yes.
He's beginning to talk to Iran. We've added ourselves to the Iranian dialogue with the European Union.
Precisely.
So he's addressing those issues. He's focusing, there's a new focus, a more sustained focus on the problem of nuclear proliferation mm-hmm. than we had from the Bush administration. Mm-hmm. He's also, I think, as has been suggested already, going to try to change the American image mm-hmm. in the world, particularly in the Muslim world.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think his speech in Turkey went a long way, as mm-hmm. it was a terrific start.
Yes.
And I think he also wants to, the global architecture, global security architecture has to change. I mean, yes. the security architecture we now have dates back to the period immediately after the Cold War. Yeah. So there's, for example, now going to be more of a focus on the G20 than on the G8 and so on.
Precisely. Yeah.
Now, as far as his team is concerned,
yeah.
These are all experienced, pragmatic people. Many of them worked for the Clinton administration.
Precisely.
They understand Asia. People like Jim Steinberg, Kurt Campbell,
yes.
Gary Seymour, so on.
Yes.
So
we're in good hands.
I think we're in very good hands.
Yes.
Could I add a couple of comments?
Please, Ambassador.
First, by moving quickly to outlaw torture and mean it,
yeah.
And to close the Guantanamo prison.
Yes.
Although it's going to be complicated in the next year to figure out what we do with these characters.
Yes.
He is immediately sending signals to the world that we'll live up to our own ideals as we try to project them abroad.
Okay.
Secondly, on his team, I agree with Professor Zagoria. And just look at his top advisors. It gives you a sense of Obama's self-confidence mm-hmm. and strength and inner security.
Yes.
By surrounding himself with very strong people.
Very experienced.
One of our top
yes.
Historians has likened it to Lincoln bringing into his cabinet a team of rivals. For example, his vice president
yes.
was head of the Foreign Relations Committee, Mr. Biden.
For many years.
Was a contestant in the election for
mm-hmm.
the nomination.
Mm-hmm.
His Secretary of State was his toughest opponent getting the nomination.
Yes.
The National Security Advisor, Mr. Jones,
yes.
Was very close to Senator McCain, his opponent in the election.
Yes.
Bob Gates, the Secretary of Defense, was, of course, in the Bush administration. So that's an extraordinary lineup. Now, having said that, President Bush had an extraordinary lineup at the beginning, and that didn't work out so well. But I'm confident that this team will.
This time will be different. Now, let's shift the focus, even narrow a little bit, and ask Dr. Schwab. Some people say that U.S.-China relations is possibly the single most important bilateral relations that we're going to have in the 21st century. Therefore, I would like to ask you, sir, in your opinion, what are the opportunities and also the challenges that you foresee in U.S.-China relations in the years to come?
Well, thank you very much for your question. Let me also say something that I'm a Democrat, registered Democrat, but I have switched my votes from time to time when I felt that the Republican presidential candidate would be better suited for the job than the Democratic one. And coming from the school of political realism, Hans Morgenthau, I would say that I'm also a centrist, like my two colleagues here. And I also, like Professor Zagoria, do not like ideologues. So we have to be more centrist.
Of course,
be aware of the realities rather than dreaming.
Or fantasize, Well, having said that, Dr. Schwab, what would you think about the U.S.-China relations, especially under President Obama?
Well, I mean, we face parallel interests,
of course,
which are extremely important when it comes to certain of the challenges that have already been mentioned, namely Iran, how to handle Iran, how to handle North Korea, how to handle Pakistan/Afghanistan, and also cross-strait relations. So we have these parallel interests.
And also now North Korea.
And North Korea, yes. I think I'd mentioned North Korea before, certainly. And the issue is that I believe that the U.S. and China have the same goals, but what we are talking about are the tactics on how to reach it. For example, in the instance of North Korea, which is extremely important for everyone here in this region, both are interested in a denuclearized peninsula. But how to reach it, I mean, we really differ enormously. Now, of course, also the issue of nuclear proliferation is a very, very serious issue. That comes, of course, is also related to North Korea. It is related to Iran. Again, we have a very parallel interests, but again, we differ on tactics, on how to achieve the goal. Now, also, of course, what is very worrisome is what is happening in Pakistan. It may become a failed state, and what would happen if, for example, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda were to get into power and have, of course, access to the nuclear weapons. Not that they're going to use the nuclear weapons, but they're going to be nuclear proliferators like Iran. So this is neither in China's interest nor is it in our interest. And, of course, we also have parallel interests so far as cross-strait relations are concerned. Stability in the cross-strait relations is extremely important to us, to the United States, and also to Mainland China, and of course also to Taiwan. I mean, it coincides. Now, we also have global challenges that we have to bear in mind.
Global economic recession. These are very serious problems.
Recession, terrorism, of course, also poverty and disease, energy and water, humanitarian issues like Darfur and human rights. Drug trafficking, etc. But I don't think that we are addressing these things effectively, at least not yet. And this is a room where we can, of course, put our heads together.
I hope our viewers are not depressed. We understand that we have a whole set of very serious problems, but I think the governments around the world are addressing those issues step by step.
Step by step, but it will take a long time.
It will take some time.
We'll get a handle on some of the most critical issues.
Of course. And we will now shift the focus back to the guests from Taiwan. If I may ask Professor Wang, Professor Wang, you've been studying the American politics and American foreign policy for a long time. Would you then care to share with us, do you anticipate any changes after what's been stated by our good friends from New York? Would you care to share with us, do you see any changes anticipated in U.S. cross-strait policy and U.S. Taiwan policy?
I think basically the both party has similar tactics to deal with the cross-strait relation, and the goal is to maintain the status quo, to maintain stabilities. I think that we have seen that 7 or 8 different administrations, they were done the same policy. They will stick to the so-called one China policies, 3 communiques in the Taiwan Relation Act. I think will be a little bit different will be that since the Obama faced, I think, a bigger challenge as he became the president, especially the global economic crisis and other security challenges. So I think that this administration, I think, will try to have the strongest relation with China. So given to that, even the U.S. still concern Taiwan security, but I think that will be pay little attention to Taiwan than the previous administration.
Okay, thank you, Professor Wang. And we're going to take a short break. And when we come back to this very special edition of the Taiwan Outlook, we will continue our discussion on the relations in general, but in particular about the global economic recession that we're confronted with, especially what can we do in Taiwan to help ourselves in terms of enduring the storm. We'll be right back.